apart from the language, it comes down to what is the right question you're going to ask.
And AI has been around for a long time. It's definitely not new.
Because of AI, the language barrier is broken down. What is generative AI doing today? It doesn't matter whether it is language, image, it can see, it can hear, it can speak, it has intelligence, and it can also remember. It has memory.
It's here to augment, not replace, right? It'll improve the productivity of a marketeer, of a journalist, of a news anchor. It's not going to replace you.
You don't need massive computational powers to basically do this. Just using one or two images of yours, a video can be created.
Okay, I'm going to hold this up here. All of this is real. All of us here are real people. Hello and welcome. You are watching Boardroom Brunch on News 9. I'm Krishna Kumar.
And I'm Karthik Malhotra.
And on this edition of Boardroom Brunch, we are discussing the future of artificial intelligence. And to do that, we have a very special set of guests joining us. We have Sangeeta Gupta, Senior Vice President and Chief Strategy Officer, Nasscom. We also have Sangeeta Bavi, Executive Director, Digital Natives, Microsoft. And Santosh Tiwari, Partner, EY Parthenon. Thank you so much for taking time out to be with us on this very special edition of Boardroom Brunch. It's interesting that we called it Future of Artificial Intelligence when artificial intelligence is so much part of our present already and has been part of our recent past as well. Every single recommendation we get on YouTube or any streaming platform is all generated by artificial intelligence. And the problem here is that most people talk about artificial intelligence and AI only with respect to generative AI. But then AI is an entire world of its own. So, Sangeeta, if I were to start asking you, tell us, what is the present of AI before we even start discussing the future of AI?
No, great question. And AI has been around for a long time. It's definitely not new. But I think what we saw with generative AI and when ChatGPT was launched in November 2022, it democratized AI, right? So today, every boardroom is talking about AI, every government is talking about AI, every college is talking about AI. So suddenly you have AI which is reaching the common person as opposed to something that was meant for an exclusive, geeky group of people, while we were all users of AI. Like if we use Netflix or if we use different shopping apps, we were all consumers of AI, but it was hidden. Today, I think it's become in your face. You know you're using AI, and the use cases have expanded manifold. So I would say, yes, it's very much here. And the future continues to be both bright and scary.
Sangeeta, so, let's come to ChatGPT. And I think, about a year back, this buzzword of Gen AI led by ChatGPT really came to the fore. Would it be fair to say that what ChatGPT did to AI was give it a UI? Was ChatGPT pretty much a UI to AI, and hence the ease of use for everybody just went up because the user interface was so intuitive and you're pretty much chatting to a machine which is generating fairly intelligent responses for you.
To the point where, from saying, why don't you Google it? We're moving towards a world where we're going to say, why don't you ChatGPT it?
So I think fully agree, and I love the analogy of UI, right? So I think the ease of use of ChatGPT, where you just typed something and you could get a great response, is what you're now seeing across all the multiple platforms. So today, ChatGPT is an important platform, but there are a number of such platforms that are there. You want to design a video, you want to design an image, you want to do a PowerPoint, you want to do coding. I think all of these different applications are now available, and I think, as somebody rightly said, you don't necessarily need coding skills, you need language skills.
I mean, is prompt engineering all about, Santosh, is prompt engineering all about just knowing English language? Or is there going to be more details that come in terms of you still need to know something beyond the English language to really produce meaningful results harnessing the full potential of AI?
It is much more than that, because apart from the language, it comes down to what is the right question you're going to ask, right? Asking the ChatGPT to write an article, but just adding to that, write the article for a 6-year-old versus write an article for a complete academic
being
paper.
Specific, being detail-oriented,
Precisely.
but at the end of the day, just English language.
Not necessarily. If you're talking about the natural language processing into this one, I think that there are a few things which are already there, but it will not be much delayed. It becomes much more common across the languages and other parts into that.
But languages is all that you need. Is that going to be the only skill expected of human beings as we move forward? Is
As
there
of now.
anything else that human beings should know apart from a language that the artificial intelligence bots understand?
I think as of now you can say that, but the speed at which it is changing, right? It would go, if you go to the multi-model kind of the interfaces or the things which are coming in.
Then you wouldn't need the language skills as well. Ouch. Krishna, what's going to happen to us?
Well. Difficult question for me to answer. Maybe I have to chat GPT.
No, you're right. In fact, if the multi-model, the way it is growing, it starts getting into that one, your videos, your pictures. In fact, if you're sending a video message to something, right? It's not far from the possibility that even that will start making the AI users into your day-to-day interactions into that one.
Sangeeta, at this stage, I have to ask you, we're all talking from, other places. What happens at a technology giant like Microsoft? How much of your lives are governed by artificial intelligence already? And how do you guys go about it, even as you're developing a platform like Copilot and, increasing its use cases across industries?
Microsoft has been, the core thesis of Microsoft is helping everybody be more productive, right? When we got Outlook and M365, it was all about driving productivity. Copilot has just accelerated productivity to a completely different dimension. And I'll just build on what Sangeeta and Santosh also said. See, what is generative AI doing today? It doesn't matter whether it is language, image, it can see, it can hear, it can speak, it has intelligence, and it can also remember. It has memory. That's essentially how generative AI and AI has democratized everything that we do.
I don't know, Krishna, everybody's talking about adding efficiency and really making people smarter. But my fear is
they're making people obsolete.
Yeah, with Sora, with ChatGPT, with Copilot, why are we required?
Good question.
Sangeeta, are we going to be required?
Over here?
I think we firmly believe that it's here to augment, not replace, right? It'll improve the productivity of a marketer, of a journalist, of a news anchor. It's not going to replace you.
Okay, one thing I know that artificial intelligence can't do, that humans can do, is eat. We are here for a lovely brunch. We have some lovely sushi later for us. In fact, this is a fusion platter that's in front of us. There's some khandvi, there's some sushi, and so let's dig in.
Yeah, so while we are digging in, I think another skill which is going to be totally irreplaceable is going to be the chef. So it's not just us humans who are going to eat, you also need human beings to cook. Or do you?
Not necessarily.
So, I saw this lovely video, in fact, we were just talking about it, where artificial intelligence linked to a mechanical product with a pencil embedded in it could pretty much ape your handwriting.
Yeah.
What is stopping artificial intelligence in sync with Robos in the kitchen cooking the best cuisine out there?
There are already some startups who have, for Indian cuisine, we know that Indian cuisine is difficult to cook.
Okay.
There are these robotic machines which can, you key in a recipe, whatever, paneer butter masala.
So it's going to order for you, it's going to collect it from your doorstep, it's going to take it to the kitchen, it's going to cook it for you, it's going to microwave it for you, and feed you as well with hands.
That's a skill we'll continue to have, right?
But Sangeeta, then which jobs are not under threat? You said entry-level mundane tasks are going to be, you said augmented, not replaced. But I see replacement happening, perhaps not as efficiently in the scientific community. Perhaps skills that doctors have, surgeons have, would take longer to replace. But everything else seems pretty much mundane. So which are the jobs which you think are absolutely safe right now?
I think it's not fair to say that there are no safe jobs, right? I think that word safe itself is wrong. Jobs are changing.
Right.
And I think we have to agree that jobs and the nature of jobs will change. It's not going to be what it was in the past. So that's point one. I think point two is, even if you take the basic, like a call center agent, right? India was a BPO destination for a long time, and we keep getting asked this question on what will happen to all those jobs which India may be doing. Now, I think there are experiments to show that a co-pilot or a similar kind of an AI tool actually improves the productivity of the call center agent. I think the third point is, because AI is now becoming so prevalent, many industries that were not using tech and AI or digital to that same extent, will actually start adopting these tools to enhance their own productivity, and hence jobs will continue to increase, right?
Santosh, is this AI adoption at an industry-wide scale beginning to happen? Because up until, let's say, COVID, there was this very natural resistance to technology. COVID changed that to quite an extent, where we were really talking about digital transformation. Is that AI transformation happening just as yet, or are these still more boardroom discussions and not really shop floor execution of those discussions?
It's on a various stages across the company. There are few companies which are going very fast into that AI first and all. There are few who are still struggling with their use cases. How do they apply it? How do they essentially translate their current business by doing it into the AI way into that? I would say it's a spectrum. If I look at the stats at some of the reports, you're talking about a range between 20% in one end to somewhere 40 to 45% other places. It depends upon the sectors also. Some of these sectors are very naturally aligned to this. Talk about, the whole fintech and that area. They were pretty much made for it, the structured part. There are few more where the things are still developing to a certain extent.
So, Sangeeta, who are the early adopters? So, who are the early adopters for a product like Copilot? And Copilot also has its manifestations across generative text, images, graphics, code, etc. So, who are the early adopters when you talk about industrial use of AI?
So there are sort of three cohorts of AI users, right? One is, businesses, industries who are using the AI tools for either becoming more productive or bringing in more efficiencies. Second is, which are absolute low-hanging sort of fruit, is all the call centers where the call center agents are becoming more productive by using Copilot scenarios or using open AI models which help them become more productive, and the turnaround time is getting reduced. The third and the most interesting one is education, where because of AI, one, the language barrier is broken down, and second, access to the right content. We've launched a pilot in some schools in Karnataka. It's called the Siksha Co-Pilot with a foundation. And they are enabling teachers to teach lessons faster. What used to take about 40 to 45 minutes.
Teachers or
Real
AI
teachers.
generated,
No,
Sora produced?
These are real teachers who are becoming more productive because, if you go in rural or even tier 2, tier 3 towns in India, the access to resources are limited. So they have to basically think of, if a science teacher is taking a science class, he or she has to rely on whatever resources he or she has available with him, right? So what they do is they check with Siksha Copilot, if I have to teach a certain lesson of chemistry, how do I use these resources and land the same lesson with my class? It's just phenomenal. So
tell me something, Sangeeta. I'm fascinated with this example of the school in Karnataka which you're giving, but at the end of the day, any sort of generative AI also requires tremendous amount of processing. So are we now finally, when you talk about AI for all, for example, are we progressing to lighter models which can work with lower processing power, where the dependence on, let's say, the NVIDIA chips reduces, where you don't need 5G internet connectivity or you don't need Wi-Fi connectivity, and just a 2G, 3G connection would do? And these models may not even require those large, CPU-based computers or laptops, and perhaps something like a smartphone would be able to do the job. Are we seeing that transition happening when you talk about AI for all?
Yeah. So if you look at generative AI, you have these large language models where you have like trillions of parameters to build a large language model, and it can't sit on a smartphone, right? Smartphones are not like computationally, it's not better. So it either like you have to host that on a cloud.
Right.
And even from a economics perspective, cost, everything is a challenge. Latency, all of these challenges come into play. But there are also small language models, which are a few billion parameters, and they can be trained such that for a specific use case, say for example, in fintech, for insurance, you can create a small language model.
These are smaller modules available.
Smaller models available which
hosted
can
locally on the machine.
So the thing is that AI also will play a hybrid strategy, in the sense that some part of it will go and hit the cloud for accessing all the large language model capabilities like OpenAI, ChatGPT, and some of it will sit on your local device. The world is moving towards that. So
fascinating. While we're having the conversation, and this is a question to both the Sangeetas on this brunch over here. One is that huge, big technology companies are creating all these artificial intelligence models for applications across industries. And then there are huge questions regarding what is India's biggest employer, which is the tech industry per se. And how much of this has changed? And there's lots of questions being asked about, are all big tech giants reducing their own role count, number of employees in their own companies? How much of it affects tech companies and the kind of jobs that are available at tech companies? I'm a little curious.
So I think there's a lot of conversation around whether it's layoffs that have happened in big tech companies or the big so-called tech companies in India reducing their overall headcount, right? And I think that is not due to AI. It's also very important to say a lot of that is being driven by the global macroeconomic environment. Also, post-COVID, we had this rapid spurt of hiring, right? So we hired over 800,000 people in 2 years. So industry is obviously realigning its workforce, recalibrating its bench workforce. So that's
So do you
like the
think jobs,
focus.
human jobs, would be then restricted to only specialization, super specialization, high-level processing from the mind, as opposed to entry-level jobs, which obviously with the advent of AI, you would not need, for example, paralegal staff in law firms. You would not need researchers in newsrooms.
That makes me think,
right?
Karthik, Sangeeta, what is an entry-level job in Microsoft today?
AI is doing it, Krishna. They don't have place for us.
Because we're reading headlines about some of the biggest IITs not getting
Not getting placed.
But that's not due to AI, right?
Yeah,
So-
that's not due to it. So, I'll take a slightly philosophical take on this, right? The thing is that you need to, as human beings, the pace of technology and the world around us is changing so rapidly that you need to upskill yourself to be relatable to this current world.
But upskill today
Yeah.
means learn prompt engineering, so you can make friends with AI.
Yeah, I mean that's the world. See, because the thing is that if you do your job in about 1 hour, a person who uses AI tool might do it in 10 minutes. So how do you basically compete with that person, right? That's the reality of today.
Santosh, tell me something. How are you retaining your clients? Because at one level, you want to perhaps tell them about efficiency using AI. At the same time, you want to tell them to retain you as a consultant because you're adding real value, AI isn't. That would be a pretty difficult pitch, right?
No, actually, it works both ways. If you take an example, so we work in the mergers and acquisitions, and you start with the diligence part of it, right? There is an element that quite a lot of my clients are trying to invest into the companies which are building AI, right? They want to understand, okay, what else is the future of it? Where exactly it is going with that one? But at the same point of time, the people who used to look through 1,000 different documents to understand the history, geography, and everything about that company.
All that can be crunched in a matter of minutes.
Yes, but now the guys who are doing that thing, they are asking better questions into that one. And the information which you collect out of this document, the dimensions which are appearing out of this thing is much better than what exactly it used to be.
So, Sangeeta, is that transformation happening at educational institutions as well? Because we believe, prompt engineering is a new course that everybody's talking about. But in addition to that, are our education systems today geared up to cater to the demands of the industry, where entry level also demands certain knowledge and experience in AI?
I think it's a great question because I think there are changes that are happening in the education system. So you see the number of courses around AI, deep learning, ML that have been introduced across universities, both the premier colleges as well as the next level of colleges. So there is that capacity creation for AI to the to the opportunities that Santosh pointed out. But I think the more important part that the industry is now looking at is how do you teach experiential learning, right? So it's not just about teaching a Python or a Microsoft code to the professionals, or PyTorch or CUDA or whatever else, right? It's about how do you put that into practice. And I think that is why the whole process of hackathons and working closely with the industry on industry use cases, I think that's the change we're now seeing, at least at a higher education level.
Another thing that we need to ensure as we discuss AI and its evolution to the future is regulation. And that's a need that's felt by everybody. That's from the common people who first began by waking up to AI saying, oh my God, so wonderful, it can do so many things. So like, oh my God, deep fakes. How are we going to deal with this? Deep fakes that can affect not just the celebrities and the famous personalities, deep fakes can affect common people. So there's so much talk about regulation. There's so much talk about, maybe, you need to form a UN type of a body to regulate AI. And then if you're going to form a body like that, the advisory body will consist of Microsoft, Google, and OpenAI and a bunch of other people, I'm guessing. Sangeeta?
Yes, ethical and responsible AI has been our core philosophy since 2015, 2016, right? So everything that, see, AI has become mainstream now because of generative AI, but like launching platforms, products which have ethical and responsible AI frameworks has always been a philosophy. And our sort of guidance to everyone is, as developers, is everybody thinking of being ethical coders and developers, right? In fact, I read an article which said that whoever is learning AI skills also has to learn psychology, because it's going to be so embedded in terms of, you know, how these two go together.
Gosh, how much upskilling is required over here? First, you're talking about learning AI and then coming to the workforce.
No, but-
No. AI and psychology and come to the workforce.
No, but it's also very scary. Sangeeta said that, you know, all of this can actually be the deep fake. Suppose if, you know, even if I get a call, it can actually be a fake call, but impersonating somebody I really know, right? So all of these are becoming very real, and you don't need massive computational powers to basically do this. Just using one or two images of yours, a video can be created.
Okay, just we're going to hold this over here. All of this is real. All of us here are real people, not deepfakes around over here. Continue, Sangeeta.
So that's why I think the role of everybody, industry, academia, government, has a very crucial role to build the right frameworks as we are bringing AI into some of the core critical workloads, applications in the industry.
So what is the role of government here, and what is the role of players like Microsoft, bodies like Nasscom, and advisors, consultants like EY, and us, the media? I mean, how do you break it down? Whose role and whose responsibility and whose authority is it to ensure that biases don't creep in, that plagiarism doesn't creep in, that you don't appropriate somebody else's work as your own? These are real issues which industry is grappling with right now.
So I think, first is technology is not good or bad. It's humans who have biases, right? So the humans who are building these products are building their biases.
But in the context of machine learning, Sangeeta, it's a function of what have you read, what have you been learned on.
What is the quality of data that you've got, right?
Absolutely.
So there are lots of factors that go into it, but AI itself is not good or bad, right? I mean, you cannot say this is good or this is bad.
So it's people really, are not good or bad.
People
it's
have
what
their
they've read and where
what they are coming from.
I love how this conversation is taking a really philosophical.
We were talking about psychology and philosophy, right?
But I want to come back to the regulation question and then come back to the role of Nasscom, right? So I think from an India market perspective, at least as Nasscom and as we've been working with our industry, our focus is to say, don't rush to regulate AI. Yes, there are very serious concerns like deep fakes, frauds, voice cloning that are areas of concern.
But what is the thinking in the government right now?
So I think the government is quite aligned to thinking that you need a more nuanced approach to regulation in India. We will not necessarily say just because EU did an AI Act, India should go and rush to do an AI Act. And I think a lot more focus on self-governance, right? I think that is the point that Sangeeta talked about.
But has self-governance worked, let's say, with social media platforms? Has self-governance worked? We've seen, multiple times the term self-governance being used.
But self-governance is the framework that the big tech can put out, right? But the consumer at the end or the developer at the end and how they are using it is something that then regulation will play a role there.
Right. So, I mean, just because we were talking about self-regulation in the context of deep fakes, when the self-regulation on social media platforms was imposed and it was made the duty of the social media platforms to take down content which is artificially, synthetically generated, while compliance might have come through, is it right to put that regulation on intermediaries like social media platforms and make them responsible for content which is hosted on their platforms?
Let me start with an example, right? One of the use cases which were thrown to us by one of our customers is the compliance department wants to use AI to make sure that everything is getting complied to. Now imagine the
just
case,
say that again.
Right. Compliance department has got 1,000-odd policies which every of their documents need to be complied to, and they want to use AI to make sure it is happening, right?
Okay.
So the way you start...
That's a fair ask.
That's a fair ask, right? Now, if I start getting onto the other side, one of the lines you mentioned when you were talking about that one is, whose content is anyway, right? The copyright laws into that one. Whenever we talk about the regulations, somehow the discussion always goes towards the responsible in the part, right? But the way AI works, it is generating content, right? Whose content it is, who is responsible for that content, who owns the copyright, right? You own the model, somebody owns the data, right? End of the day, when the model becomes intelligent, right? Who owns it, right? The point which I'm trying to reach into that is the regulation overall is not a single dimension, only privacy in that aspect. There is a much wider aspect of it which needs to come into that one. Even the social media, when you're talking about that, ask them about the tools which they are utilizing to manage such wide amount of the data. Even there it is play.
So in India, are we looking at the Digital India Bill, Digital India Act to cover AI? Are we looking at a new law altogether? And what is going to be the best approach? Should it, like you began to, by mentioning that it should ideally be all encompassing but should not be restrictive. So what kind of a framework are we heading towards, and should we be heading towards? Because that fine balance between regulation and innovation is very difficult to crack. So how does one go about doing it?
I think given the pace of technology change, you cannot create a perfect law, right? So it's important to, whether it's the Digital India Act that will likely come up, whether it's the DPDP bill, whether it's the Copyright Act, and multiple laws that India already has, right? How do you think about them in the context of generative AI, right? And can we look at amending those laws if they don't hold good from a generative AI perspective? While there'll be some high-risk use cases which may need a complete new law, right? But don't bucket all of AI as one is really our submission.
Okay, I have a question, call it a tangent from it. One is that truly artificial intelligence has been democratized, which means that the innovation doesn't necessarily have to come from India. It can come from any part of the world. And then if every government, say European Union, the US, India, we all go about creating our own laws, eventually there'll be way too many laws that AI is passing through, isn't it?
It's a brilliant question.
See, the thing is that, can we look at what EU is doing or US is doing and literally like copy paste that for India? The answer is no. It will not work. Does India need something of its own? The answer is yes. But what and how, because it's going to keep changing so rapidly, that is not clear, right? But is a regulatory framework of sorts required? The answer is pretty much
So,
yes.
like you mentioned, and just taking a leaf from your thought, Krishna, technology ensures that borders are fairly porous. So, what I'm trying to arrive at is that which law globally then comes into being simply because if Gemini creates a response that the Indian government does not like, is that server in India? Is that cloud in India? Is that being processed outside of India? And hence, is the Indian law even going to govern what comes out as a response through a generative AI platform?
It's a great question, and I don't necessarily have the answer. But I think if you think about the data protection bill, right? Every country has its own data protection and privacy bills.
That's right.
So, and companies that are complying cross-border have to comply with the laws of those countries.
I want to talk about something else. If you're done with regulations for now, I don't know. I think it's a never-ending conversation.
And there are no easy answers.
And there are no easy answers. I want to also talk about energy consumption. So, that is again another debate that perhaps the world doesn't have and isn't producing enough energy and isn't really tapping into enough avenues of generating energy, which is going to power this whole AI, generative AI, when it becomes all effervescent across lives, across organizations. Is energy really going to be a concern when we talk about AI, or is this more hype and there isn't too much to it?
It's already a concern. In fact,
is the concern real?
It is. The concern is definitely real. If you look at the amount of the GPUs, amount of the power and the processing required to train some of these large models into that one, right? Data centers are already a large consumer of power across the globe. Now you're talking about adding more capacity into that one, right? And I think the response, some of the things like SLMs and the small language models and the things, is coming as a response to that. The work on it, the concern has been realized, and I think there is already an activity happening towards that. It is going to take some time to get mature into that one, but if the sustainability part has to be maintained, you will see, and I think, hate to make a forecast kind of thing like that.
Yeah, but no, go ahead. We'll not hold you to it.
But you will see quite a lot of these smaller models coming, and at one point of time, the smaller models will become one of the criteria for their success will be energy efficient, right?
Sangeeta, too early for us in India to think about energy efficiency because we are just about at the cusp of packaging and testing semiconductors, then hopefully manufacturing fabs in India. So chipsets, computing, data centers, all that is work in progress. Too early.
Far away.
Absolutely.
Sam Altman, we're far away from creating OpenAI in this country.
Which is partially true, but I think if you see at least the Indian tech companies, they've all committed to their net zero goals, right? So as they will build AI applications on top of whether it's an OpenAI or a Gemini and other models, they will definitely have to keep the ESG perspective into that, right? So I think you have a set of companies, and this is true for banks. Many of them in India have committed to their net zero goals. So you will see responsible adoption. And because we are not necessarily building out these trillion-dollar parameter models, but more manageable models, maybe the biggest ones will be 70 billion, 80 billion or whatever, and those will be very few, your energy consumptions are not going to be as high. And technology and AI will actually help build the optimization in the time we get there, right? So,
and also if you see some of the software developers, right, they're actually building code which is consuming lesser energy. That is becoming one of the charters for some of these coding schools and academic courses, where they're teaching developers how to code efficiently. So you're
more with
consuming
less.
lesser energy.
So
Doing more with
reverse
less.
engineering in that sense.
Yeah.
To
think about
make-
every footstep, right? So,
Yeah.
Fascinating. We could really have this conversation over brunch and then continue it into dinner as well, because that's the amount of things that we can discuss with comes to the future of artificial intelligence. But I'm afraid we've completely run out of time here. Thank you so much for taking time out to be with us here on this edition of Boardroom Brunch on News 9. And with that, it's a wrap here from our side. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.